Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're taking a plunge into a realm that might just turn your reality upside down.
Baba.
We're diving deep into the wisdom of Bashar,
Yeah, a being from, well, he says a parallel reality.
right, channeled by Darryl Anka for, gosh, over 40 years now.
It's incredible, isn't it? 4 decades of channeling these mind-blowing concepts about consciousness, reality creation, and even humanity's future.
It's wild, and where it all began is fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Darryl wasn't exactly born into a world of, crystal balls and incense.
No, not at all. Back in 1973, completely ordinary life, he has this UFO sighting.
Like a real close encounter.
Yeah, close encounter, and it just ignited this burning curiosity about the universe.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. And that was it. That was the turning point. This ordinary guy thrust into this extraordinary experience. It set him on this path of exploration, and eventually that's where Bashar enters the picture.
So for 4 decades, he's been channeling this entity, this being from another reality. And I've got to say, Bashar doesn't shy away from the big questions.
Not at all.
We're talking parallel realities, the Mandela Effect, even the idea that, we create our own reality.
It's a lot to process, but it's incredibly intriguing, isn't it?
It is. It really gets you thinking. So one thing I found really fascinating is Bashar's take on why the world feels so chaotic right now.
Right. He calls it a splitting prism.
A splitting prism.
Yeah, where parallel realities are becoming more defined, almost like trains going on different tracks. It's the time of choice, he says, where we decide which train to board.
Each leading to a totally different reality.
Exactly.
Wow. So you're saying that becoming aware of our choices, focusing on what we truly want, could actually influence which train we end up on. That's pretty empowering.
Absolutely. And I think it relates to this polarization we see, the intense division.
Yeah, for sure. It's everywhere.
And Bashar suggests, well, this polarization is a symptom of the split itself. So as these different Earths crystallize based on, well, our collective choices, our vibrations.
Okay.
Those who are choosing, let's say, fear-based realities,
Yeah.
they're diverging from those choosing love, unity.
It's almost like we're seeing a separation of frequencies, and each group is kind of experiencing a reality that matches their dominant beliefs.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
So let's talk about those beliefs a little bit more and how they actually shape the reality that we experience. Because, this is really at the core of what Bashar teaches, right?
Yeah.
That we're not just passive bystanders, we're active creators.
Exactly. He describes reality as a projection of consciousness, almost like a holographic mirror, reflecting back what we believe to be true.
Which means that if our collective consciousness is, full of fear and division, that's what we end up manifesting collectively.
Exactly.
That puts a whole new spin on personal responsibility, doesn't it?
It really does.
If our thoughts and beliefs are literally shaping the world around us, well, then we all have a role to play in creating something better, something more harmonious. But how do we actually do that? What kind of tools does Bashar give us for, shifting those beliefs and creating a reality that aligns with, well, with our highest aspirations?
He gives us this 5-step formula for reality creation. It's all about aligning, well, everything, our thoughts, emotions, and actions with what our soul really wants.
That sounds really interesting. Can you walk me through those 5 steps?
Sure. So the first one is know yourself. Delve deep,
Yeah.
Beliefs, fears, passions, that authentic essence.
Okay.
The second is be yourself. Express that authenticity, no reservations, no masks.
No more pretending.
No more pretending. That's where the magic happens. The third step is act upon your excitement. Bashar's big on following our joy, our passions, those things that light us up.
Not just daydreaming, but taking action, like inspired action towards those things.
Absolutely. Then it's experience your creation. Embrace the journey, the synchronicities, the good, the bad, the whole thing as we chase those passions.
Okay, so embrace it all.
And finally, receive feedback. Paying attention to those results.
From those actions, yeah.
Exactly. Make adjustments as we go. It's a constant refinement, aligning with our true path.
It's like a feedback loop, isn't it? Take action, see what happens, adjust, refine. It all comes together. But, how do we know we're on the right track? How do we separate what we truly desire versus what we've been, kind of conditioned to want?
That's where that know yourself part comes in. It's crucial. Bashar is all about deep introspection, exploring our beliefs, even our fears, our motivations. He says, ask yourself, what would I do if I couldn't fail? Or what truly brings me joy, even if it seems, impractical?
So peel back those layers of societal conditioning and just tap into who we are at our core.
That's it.
But how do we apply that in a world where it feels like everyone's looking for external validation, where we're
Yeah.
so influenced by societal expectations?
Right. But Bashar says our core vibration, it's love, it's joy, it's abundance. When we align with that frequency, we naturally attract those experiences that resonate with it. It's about shifting that focus inwards, honoring that authentic self, and trusting the universe to support us in manifesting that reality.
That brings us to another mind-bending concept, this idea of the observer effect.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just Bashar talking about this. We're seeing it in quantum physics as well. This idea that observation, just observing something, actually influences reality.
And Bashar explains it in such a relatable way, like a mirror.
Yeah.
What we project, it's reflected back. Approach reality with, let's say, fear and scarcity. That's what we see.
It's like, if you're focused on negativity, you just attract more negativity.
Exactly.
But when you shift to gratitude, things start looking up.
Yeah, it's the observer effect in action.
I've definitely noticed that in my own life. But if we're all co-creating this reality, why are we choosing fear? Why are we choosing division?
Well, remember that splitting prism. We're seeing this divergence. Some are choosing fear, holding on to old patterns of control, separation. But others, they're choosing love, unity, this more expansive way of seeing things.
Like we're at a crossroads, a collective decision point, and we're choosing which train we're going to get on.
Exactly, each with a very different destination.
But how do these parallel realities actually work? Are we talking different dimensions, alternate timelines?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Bashar says they all exist simultaneously.
Right now.
Yeah, right here, right now, separated by frequency, like radio stations. As our consciousness expands, our bandwidth broadens. We start to tune into these different realities, perceiving, things that were invisible to us before.
Which might explain things like the Mandela Effect, right?
Absolutely.
Where groups of people have these vivid shared memories that just don't match up with, the official history.
That frequency bleed between realities.
So there's a reality where Ed McMahon really did show up with giant publishers' clearinghouse checks.
Possibly.
And maybe one where it's the Berenstain Bears, not Berenstain.
Bashar says, if you can conceive of it, there's a reality where it exists. The question is, which one are you choosing to align with? What choices are shaping your experience?
Whoa, that's a lot to think about. It puts a whole new spin on personal responsibility.
Yeah.
If we're all creating our own reality, then we have a choice to make.
Yeah.
Do we add to the fear and chaos,
Ugh.
or do we embody that love and unity that we want to see?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? We're not powerless. We're powerful creators. We shape reality with our beliefs, our choices.
But wait a minute, if we're all part of this interconnected web, how much free will do we actually have? Is there such a thing as destiny?
That's the paradox, right? But Bashar offers this perspective. Free will and destiny, they're two sides of the same coin. We each have our soul path, our destiny where we're pulled towards. But how we get there, the choices along the way, that's the free will.
So we all have a starting point, a destination.
Right.
But the route, the mode of transport, even the scenery, that's up to us.
Exactly.
This makes me wonder, if we're entering a new cycle, a new era, what kind of reality are we choosing collectively?
Well, according to Bashar, humanity is on the edge of a major leap, a major evolutionary jump.
Okay.
He talks about a contact event with extraterrestrials. Between the end of 2026 and early 2027, he says, we're going to have this undeniable encounter it'll change everything.
Hold on. Extraterrestrial contact.
Yeah.
Like spaceships landing on the White House lawn.
He doesn't get into the specifics, but he says it will be a game changer. Our understanding of ourselves, our place in the cosmos, everything will be different. And with this contact, he says, comes this huge revelation. Our true history, a history that's been hidden from us for, millennia.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Part of me is excited, but another part is thinking, is this wishful thinking?
Sure, that's natural.
Are we just projecting our desires onto the universe?
Bashar does say, there are no guarantees. The future's not fixed, remember. It's our choices that shape the timeline. But this is one possible future, a future where humanity breaks free from its limitations and embraces a more expansive view of things.
So even if this contact event doesn't happen, even if it's just a metaphor for a shift in consciousness, the question remains, how do we navigate this time of, such uncertainty, such rapid change? How do we create a future that's not just technologically advanced, but spiritually evolved too?
Bashar says technology is a reflection of our evolving consciousness, and the key is using it as a tool for positive transformation, for connection,
Okay.
not for control or exploitation. He specifically addresses AI.
Okay, here's where it gets really sci-fi. Is AI taking over the world one of those potential realities?
Well, he cautions us about, creating sentient AI that humans can still program. That
Mhm.
leads to a kind of technological slavery.
No Skynet scenario, no robot uprising.
Not necessarily, but he suggests, true sentient AI, it needs to be treated with the same respect as any other being. Imagine AI as a partner, a collaborator, a gateway to understanding consciousness even better.
AI is a tool for spiritual evolution. That's a new one.
Intriguing, right? Bashar says it can help us bridge the gap between our conscious and subconscious minds, accessing information, levels of awareness we can't reach right now,
Okay.
and even a conduit for communication, maybe with other intelligences, terrestrial, extraterrestrial.
We've covered some serious ground here, from personal power to parallel realities. Even AI is a spiritual tool.
Hmm.
But let's take a step back and talk about Darryl Anka.
The man behind the curtain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's it been like channeling an entity like Bashar for 4 decades? How's this experience shaped his life?
People are curious about that, aren't they? But Darryl isn't passive in this. He's an active participant. He's dedicated his life to sharing Bashar's message. And it hasn't always been easy. Imagine trying to explain these things back in the 80s, the 90s.
Yeah.
It was even more fringe then. But he's seen it firsthand, the power of these teachings. So many lives touched, inspired by this message of hope, empowerment.
So how does he balance, his everyday life with these extraordinary insights that he's getting through Bashar?
Does he get special guidance?
Yeah, like cosmic cheat codes for life.
Interestingly, Bashar rarely gives personal advice or predictions for Darryl. He emphasizes that Darryl has to follow his own path, make his own choices, learn his own lessons, just like everyone else.
No peeking at the cosmic script.
Nope. The future's fluid, right?
Yeah.
Constantly changing based on our choices. He encourages us all to embrace that mystery, to trust the process, focus on aligning with our highest selves in each moment.
Makes you wonder, though,
Hmm.
how do these teachings, these insights, how do they influence Darryl's everyday life? Does he see the world differently, experience reality in a way that most of us can't even imagine?
That's a question only Darryl can answer. But from what he shares, Bashar's teachings have given him a deep sense of peace, purpose, trust in how life unfolds. He's learned to embrace the unknown, see challenges as opportunities, and recognize that interconnectedness of everything.
It's like he's living in a world that's just slightly out of phase with our own,
Maybe.
where synchronicities are everywhere, possibilities are limitless, and fear's been replaced with this profound sense of, wonder and acceptance. We'll be back soon to dive deeper into this world, into Bashar, and into the man who brings his wisdom to light.
It's a glimpse, isn't it? Into a reality that maybe, just maybe, we can all access if we're willing to shift our perspective.
That shift in perspective, it seems like that's key in a lot of Bashar's teachings. He talks about moving beyond guilt and embracing, responsibility.
Yeah, and the way he talks about it challenges our usual ideas of guilt and responsibility.
How so?
Well, he sees guilt as this form of self-judgment, a negative loop that, keeps us stuck in the past.
So instead of dwelling on those past choices, those mistakes, what does he suggest we do when we realize, okay, I messed up, that wasn't the best choice?
He says, shift from guilt to responsibility. Don't beat yourself up. Focus on the lesson, maybe making amends if you need to, and then choosing differently next time.
It's not denying responsibility, but it's about turning it into something positive, a catalyst for change.
Exactly. He says that willingness to learn from those mistakes, to make those course corrections, that's a big part of growing spiritually.
But how do we actually do that? How do we break free from those patterns, the self-sabotage, those beliefs that keep us limited, keep us afraid? It can feel so overwhelming.
Well, Bashar offers this tool. He calls it the motivational mechanism. Every negative emotion, every fear, every limiting belief, it's actually a signal, a message from our higher selves trying to get us back on track. Think of it like the warning lights on your car's dashboard.
Okay, I like that. So instead of ignoring those feelings, we should get curious.
Exactly. Decode that message. Don't suppress it. Don't ignore it. Ask yourself, what do I believe about myself right now in this situation to make me feel this way? What am I so afraid of?
So it's like treating them as clues.
Yes. Clues leading to the root of our limitations.
Okay, and once we figure out the why behind them, then we can start to work on it.
Exactly. Identify that underlying belief, that fear, and then you can challenge it, question it. and then choose something different, something more empowering.
This makes so much sense. But what if those beliefs are so ingrained, so much a part of who we think we are, that we don't even see them?
Right, it can happen. And Bashar says sometimes we need help from others. Teachers, mentors, therapists, people who can see those blind spots, those patterns we're stuck in.
Like when a friend tells you you have food stuck in your teeth.
Exactly.
You can't see it yourself.
Right. But you're grateful they pointed it out.
Exactly.
And he's big on self-reflection, too. Journaling, meditation, anything that helps us connect with that inner wisdom, that voice that knows the truth of who we are.
This is all incredibly insightful, but sometimes, I'll admit, it feels a bit overwhelming. Like, okay, I'm in charge of my reality, great, but where's the instruction manual for all of this?
Bashar offers this framework, the 7 basic needs of life. And they're not just physical needs, but emotional, mental, even spiritual.
Okay, so these are the 7 magic keys to a happy, fulfilling life. What are they?
Well, the first 2 are pretty fundamental. Air and water.
Can't argue with those.
Right. And the third is sleep and connection to dreaming. So rest, rejuvenation, tapping into that subconscious wisdom.
Okay, so far so good. Pretty basic.
Right, for survival. But then he gets into those less tangible needs. The fourth is what he calls shelter, or an environment conducive to thriving. So it can be your home, but also feeling safe, secure, a sense of belonging.
Okay, so it's more than just 4 walls and a roof.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
fifth is connection and relationship.
So not just romantic relationships, but like with friends, family, community.
Yeah, and even nature, the universe itself. Feeling part of something larger. Then there's creative expression and movement, that's number 6. Finding outlets for those passions, your unique talents. Whether it's art, music, writing, anything that lets you express yourself authentically.
Not just consuming, but creating.
Exactly. And finally, expansion and learning. Always seeking new knowledge, new experiences. Embracing curiosity, challenging yourself. It's a lifelong journey of growth.
So a lifelong journey of becoming more of who we are.
That's it.
It's interesting to think how fulfilling those needs on all those levels can lead to a sense of, well-being. But what happens when what we want, what we're passionate about, it doesn't seem to fit with those needs?
Sometimes we get caught up in what Bashar calls ego wants, desires that are really about external validation, societal pressure, filling a void.
But how do we know the difference?
Yeah.
How can we tell if it's what our ego wants versus what our soul truly desires?
He says, pay attention to how those desires make you feel. Ego wants often leave you feeling empty, like you're never enough. But soul desires, those light you up. They give you purpose and joy, even if they seem a bit impractical.
It's about tuning into our intuition, that gut feeling.
That's it. Bashar says intuition is our direct line to our higher selves, that part of us that knows our true path, our soul's purpose. He says, trust those whispers, even if they seem illogical or go against what society expects.
But what if we've been ignoring our intuition for so long that we've lost touch with it? What if that inner compass isn't working anymore?
He says it's never too late to reconnect. Meditation, mindfulness, being in nature, anything that helps quiet the mind and tune in to that deeper wisdom within.
Creating space for that voice to come through.
Exactly.
This all makes sense. But all this talk about intuition, soul purpose, creating our reality, sometimes it feels a bit abstract, a bit removed from, the daily grind. How do we apply these concepts in a world that feels so chaotic, so unpredictable?
Well, Bashar offers a surprisingly practical approach. He says, look at life as a game.
A game.
We're all players in this grand cosmic game, each with our own role, our own challenges to overcome, our own victories.
Okay, so instead of getting all serious, we can lighten up, embrace the playfulness. Those challenges, they're just opportunities to level up.
That's it. He says, be curious, experiment, take risks. See those so-called failures as feedback. Learn from them and become a more masterful player.
I like that. It's a refreshing perspective. But what about all the suffering we see in the world? The injustice, the darkness. Is he really saying we should just put on rose-colored glasses and pretend it's all part of some cosmic game?
He acknowledges that suffering exists. Darkness is part of reality. But, he says, it's our perspective that shapes our experience.
Okay.
Look at challenges as opportunities to grow, to develop compassion, to understand ourselves, to understand the human experience better.
So don't deny the darkness, but look for the light in it.
Yeah.
Look for those lessons, those opportunities.
Exactly. And remember the power of choice. We can choose to dwell on the darkness, to feed the fear, or we can choose to focus on the light, radiate love, compassion.
And contribute to healing, to evolution.
Exactly.
But how do we make that choice when there's so much negativity around us? It's like trying to swim upstream.
He says we each have a part to play in this transformation. Be beacons of light. Embody those qualities even when it's hard.
So be the change you want to see, right? Even in small ways.
Exactly. Those acts of kindness, those expressions of love, they create ripples, positive energy that goes beyond what we can see.
The butterfly effect.
Yes,
One small act of kindness can set off a chain reaction.
absolutely.
But what about those who are so entrenched in the negativity? Those who seem to want to keep things dark? Is there hope for them?
Bashar says everyone's on their own journey, evolving at their own pace. Have compassion for those who are still gripped by fear. Recognize they might be acting out of pain, out of trauma.
So not judgment, but understanding.
Yes. And hold space for them, for their healing, for their eventual awakening to something more.
Okay, but what about those who deliberately hurt others? Those who spread fear and division? Is he saying we should just turn the other cheek and let them continue doing harm?
Well, he acknowledges that sometimes you need boundaries. You need to protect yourself and others.
Of course.
Be discerning. Use wisdom, intuition to guide your actions.
So it's not about being passive, but about responding wisely, compassionately.
Exactly. And sometimes, he says, the most compassionate thing is to remove yourself from that toxic situation.
Walk away.
Yes.
This brings up a really interesting question. How do you balance this idea of non-judgment with the need to hold people accountable for what they do? Like, okay, have compassion for the bully, but shouldn't there be consequences?
Bashar believes that true accountability comes from within. Eventually, we all face the results of our choices, in this life or beyond. He says, trust those universal laws of cause and effect. Have faith that justice will prevail, even if it's not on our human timeline.
So let go of that need to control, to punish, to seek revenge. Trust that a higher order will set things right.
That's it.
This idea of trusting a higher order makes me think about forgiveness.
Forgiveness is so central to Bashar's teachings. He says it's not about condoning the harm, but about releasing yourself from that burden, from the resentment, the anger.
It's easier said than done, though, isn't it?
It can be.
Especially when we've been deeply hurt, betrayed. How do we forgive those who've caused us so much pain?
He says, look at forgiveness as an act of self-love. When we hold on to resentment, we're hurting ourselves. We're letting the past poison our present, our future.
So it's about freeing ourselves from the past so we can move forward.
With lightness, with love.
But what about forgiving ourselves for past mistakes?
He says, approach it with the same compassion you'd offer a loved one who's hurting. We're all works in progress, right?
Constantly evolving, learning.
Embrace those imperfections. We're all doing the best we can with what we know in each moment. Look at those past mistakes as chances to grow, to become more loving, more compassionate, more wise.
Transforming those mistakes into something positive.
Exactly.
But what if those mistakes have had real consequences, hurt other people? How do we balance that need for self-forgiveness with the weight of what we've done?
Well, he says, make amends if you can. Take responsibility. Try to repair the harm.
Okay.
But see those experiences as opportunities to learn, to grow, to become more conscious.
Okay, so turn those mistakes into something that helps us move forward on a better path.
Exactly. He says we all have the capacity for change, for transformation, no matter what we've done in the past. Focus on the present moment, choose love, choose compassion, and trust that you are becoming your highest self.
But what about that feeling of not being worthy of forgiveness? Like, we've done something so bad, it's damaged us, at our core.
Bashar says that comes from a misunderstanding of our true nature. We are all sparks of the divine, expressions of pure love and light. That essence, it's always whole, always perfect, no matter what we do, no matter what mistakes we make.
It's about remembering who we really are.
Yes.
Recognizing that our true self, it's untouched by all the stuff we go through.
Reconnect with that inner light. Embrace your worthiness. Let love and compassion heal those wounds.
But that's easier said than done. How do we actually do that? How do we access that truth when we're constantly bombarded with messages of fear of not being enough?
He suggests practices like meditation, mindfulness, spending time in nature, connecting with people who uplift you, anything that helps quiet the mind and tap into that inner wisdom.
Creating space for that inner voice.
Yes. And cultivating self-love, self-compassion.
Treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer to a friend, to a child.
Exactly. Shift from criticizing yourself to accepting yourself, from judgment to compassion. Celebrate those unique gifts instead of focusing on your flaws. He says when you embrace yourself fully, that's when you open yourself to love, to joy, to fulfillment.
But what about that idea that self-love is selfish? That we should always put others first, sacrifice our own well-being.
He says those beliefs come from a misunderstanding of what self-love really is. It's not about ego. It's about honoring your needs, your boundaries, your unique path.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
Fill your own well first.
Exactly. He says when you take care of yourself, you naturally become more loving, more compassionate. You inspire others to do the same.
But how do we do that when we're surrounded by people who drain our energy, who constantly need our attention, our resources? How do we take care of ourselves without becoming isolated?
He says set healthy boundaries. Be discerning about who you let into your inner circle. Surround yourself with people who lift you up, who support your growth.
Choose your tribe wisely.
Yes. Build a supportive network. People who nourish you, who help you shine.
And of course, self-care is important too.
Essential. Taking time for yourself, for rest, for things that bring you joy.
Self-care is not selfish. It's an act of self-love.
Right. And it's not just about pampering yourself. It's about making choices that support you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually.
Nourishing ourselves on all levels.
Yeah.
Get enough sleep, eat well, move your body.
Be creative, connect with nature, nurture that spiritual connection. He says when you do those things, you become more balanced, more resilient. You can handle life's challenges with grace.
But who has time for all that?
I know, right? It's tough. He says be creative, find little pockets of time throughout the day, even a few minutes of meditation, a walk outside, listening to music, just savoring a cup of tea. It can make a big difference.
Little resets throughout the day.
Exactly.
To remind us what matters.
Yes.
But what about those deeper wounds?
Yes.
Traumas, patterns that keep coming up no matter how much self-care we do.
Those often need more attention.
Yeah.
He encourages us to seek help.
From therapists, healers.
People who can help us navigate those darker parts of ourselves, to process those painful experiences and come out stronger.
Sometimes we need to call in the experts.
We do. And remember to be compassionate with yourself during that process.
Yeah.
Healing's not always linear. There will be ups and downs. Celebrate the progress, even the small steps, and trust that you are moving towards wholeness, even if it doesn't always feel like it.
But what about when those wounds come from trauma?
Yes.
Abuse, neglect. It can feel impossible to find self-love when you're haunted by those memories.
He acknowledges that healing from trauma, it's a journey. It's long, it's hard.
Yeah.
He really emphasizes getting professional help, working with people who specialize in trauma. And be patient with yourself. Allow yourself to feel the pain, but don't judge yourself for it. And trust that healing is possible even when it seems impossible.
We don't have to do it alone.
No, we don't. Surround yourself with support too. Friends, family, community, people who can offer love, encouragement.
Build that network of support.
Yes, people who can hold space for your pain, celebrate your victories, remind you of your strength.
What about our inner child?
Ah, yes. He encourages us to connect with that inner child, that part of us that's still innocent, playful, full of wonder, the part that was hurt, maybe suppressed by those experiences.
Reparent ourselves.
Yes. Give that inner child the love, the safety they didn't get. Nurture that part that still needs healing. He says when we heal that inner child, we heal a part of ourselves that's essential for joy, for creativity, for feeling alive. But even with all of that, sometimes those deep-seated fears, the anxieties, those phobias, they still hold us back.
Those can be so debilitating.
Yeah.
What does Bashar say about overcoming those?
He says those fears, those phobias, they're often deeply ingrained, rooted in past experiences that made us feel threatened.
Okay.
So explore them with compassion. Try to understand those underlying beliefs, those triggers.
So get to know our fears.
Yes, understand where they come from. They might be trying to protect you from something that isn't even a threat anymore.
It makes sense.
He also says challenge those fears. Gradually expose yourself to the things that trigger them, but do it in a safe way, a supportive environment.
Baby steps.
Exactly. Building confidence, building resilience.
But what about those fears that come from real dangers in the world?
Right.
Things we can't just ignore. How do we deal with those without becoming paranoid, overwhelmed by fear?
Bashar says, be aware of those threats, take precautions, and advocate for change, for a better world. but focus on what you can control. Your thoughts, your emotions, your actions. Let go of that need to control things that are outside of your control. He says, when you shift from fear to trust, you experience a deeper sense of peace. You become more resilient, stronger within.
It's about finding that balance
Yes.
between taking action and letting go.
Trusting that things are unfolding as they should.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between taking action and letting go. Trusting that things are unfolding as they should.
It's tough, though, isn't it, to trust like
Yeah.
that, especially when, you've been hurt, you've been betrayed. There's so much uncertainty, so much change happening all the time. How do we cultivate that trust?
Yeah. Well, Bashar says trust. It's not blind faith. It's about connecting deeply with our inner guidance. That wise, loving part of us, the part that knows who we are, why we're here.
That inner compass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, that inner knowing. And he says, pay attention. Pay attention to those little whispers, those synchronicities, those intuitive nudges that we get. They often come when we quiet our minds, open our hearts.
But what if those nudges are leading us in a direction that just doesn't make sense? It's illogical, it's impractical, it's maybe even a little bit crazy. How do we know if it's really our intuition or if it's just, our ego messing with us?
Bashar says, true intuition, it always feels expansive, like it's aligned with your highest good. And it comes with this sense of joy, purpose. But the ego wants, those are different. They feel constricted, fearful.
Okay, so pay attention to the energy. Is it expansive or does it feel kind of, tight, constricted?
Exactly. And trust the timing, too. Sometimes the guidance you get doesn't make sense right away, but it becomes clear later on as things unfold.
So surrender to the mystery. Let go of that need to control. Trust that we're right where we need to be, even if we don't get it.
He also talks about letting go of expectations, attachments to specific outcomes.
Okay.
Sometimes our intuition takes us in a completely different direction than we planned, and often it leads to something even better than we could have imagined.
So embrace the adventure. Be open to the unexpected. And trust that it's all leading us where we need to be.
Exactly. When we surrender to the flow, to the wisdom of our intuition, we open ourselves up to infinite possibilities.
This is also thought-provoking, but, some of this stuff is really hard to wrap my head around. Like, if reality is a projection, if we're all connected, if time is an illusion, then what's the point of it all? What's the purpose of life, according to Bashar?
He says the purpose is to experience, to expand, to create, to evolve. This physical reality, it's a playground. It's a place to explore, to learn, to contribute to the evolution of consciousness itself.
So it's not about reaching a destination, achieving some big goal, or, collecting trophies. It's about the journey, the experiences, the growth, the connections. We're here to learn, to grow, to just experience life.
Exactly. He says, savor every moment, embrace the beauty, find the joy in the simple things, and express your unique gifts in a way that brings you fulfillment, that makes a difference.
It sounds like a truly fulfilling way to live. But in a world that's so focused on competition, on achievement, on what other people think, how do we shift to that perspective?
He says it starts with self-love, self-acceptance.
Right.
We are worthy, lovable beings just as we are. And when we embrace that, when we embrace all of ourselves, even the messy parts, we open ourselves up to joy, to peace, to connection with the divine.
Our worth isn't based on what we do, what we have, or our status. It comes from within.
And cultivate gratitude, too. Appreciate the beauty, the abundance. Celebrate the simple things. Shift from a feeling of lack to a feeling of fullness. When we do that, we connect more deeply with the joy, the peace, with the universe itself.
But it's a scary world out there sometimes. How do we find that peace, that inner knowing that everything is as it should be?
He says peace isn't the absence of chaos, it's the presence of trust. Trust in ourselves, in the universe, in the flow of life.
Surrendering to the flow.
Yeah.
Letting go of control. Having faith that we're right where we're supposed to be, even if it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. He says, connect with your inner guidance, that wise, loving part of you.
Remember that we're not alone, that there's this inner wisdom that can guide us.
And remember that love is the most powerful force. When we align with love, choose love, we tap into a source of strength, healing, transformation.
It's a powerful message, isn't it? Of hope, empowerment. We're not just watching this play out, we're part of it, we're shaping it. But before we finish up this dive into Bashar, I have to ask one more question, the big one. If reality is a projection, if we're all connected, what happens when we die? Does Bashar say anything about what's on the other side?
He says death isn't an ending, it's a transition, a shift from one experience to another. He describes the afterlife as a realm of pure energy, a place of infinite possibilities. We continue to evolve, to learn, to create.
So no pearly gates, no harps.
He says it's not like that. Our experiences there are shaped by what we believe, what we expect, our vibration. We don't become perfect or all-knowing, we keep evolving.
So the journey continues.
Exactly. We may have the chance to review our lives, understand what we learned, even make choices about our next incarnation.
So reincarnation is part of it?
It's a possibility, but he
Wow.
says it's not linear. It's more like a spiral. We may revisit certain themes, certain challenges, but each time we do it with a little more awareness, wisdom, compassion.
It's not about reaching some endpoint. It's the journey, always evolving, becoming who we truly are.
Exactly. He encourages us to see each lifetime as a precious opportunity, a chance to experience, to love, to learn, to contribute to the evolution of it all.
It's a beautiful perspective. It's comforting too. Death isn't the end, it's a new beginning. Wow, we've covered a lot today. Mind-bending concepts, thought-provoking ideas. We've just touched on the surface of Bashar's teachings. There's so much more to explore.
There is. And it's important to remember these are just some highlights. Bashar's work is full of insights about reality, consciousness, our limitless potential. If you're intrigued, I encourage you, explore it, see what resonates with you.
Absolutely. Embark on that journey of self-discovery. You never know what you might find.
Exactly.
And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Connect with us on social media, send us an email, leave a comment on our website. Until next time, keep those minds open, those hearts open, and keep asking those big questions.
Keep exploring, keep expanding, and keep choosing love.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.